Hey, welcome back. Miranda here with Angie. And in this session, we're going to keep talking about creativity in campus ministry, but we're specifically going to talk about creative and efficient communication in ministry. And so that means how we're communicating in our large group meetings from the front. That encompasses how we're communicating with the university. I mean, really, anytime you're communicating a message is what we're going to be talking about in this. So Angie, start us off. What are some thoughts that you have on creative and efficient campus ministry communication?
I think one of the major things is going to be how you communicate with your university, because you always want, when you're dealing with the government of your university, to be doing that in a way that is helpful.
Yeah.
And that they can see you as an ally as opposed to seeing you as maybe a hindrance to anything that's happening on campus, or as someone who's trying to take away from their programs.
Yeah.
So anytime that you communicate with them, you want to make sure that your tone is extremely helpful and that you're communicating in a way that says we are on board with everything at the university, and how can we be of assistance. I know we've talked today also about doing res hall programs and things like that, and I think that offering anything that you can do to do something like that is going to be a great form of communication with your university.
Yeah. You touched on like the way that we communicate with the administration. I think sometimes we get it in our head that like the administration of the university is the enemy, like they are who are keeping us from the university. And so we get this this antagonistic mentality, and all of a sudden we see them as the opposition, and they're not. They are our greatest, you said it, allies on campus.
Definitely.
Because the administration is who is going to hold the key to the university. Right. And so if we come in and our communication is, this is what I'm here to do, let me do it, that's probably not going to go well.
No, but if we come in and we say we want to serve this university community, how can we do that? How can we help you? Those are great ways to just get a foot in the door on some things that they can let you into that otherwise you would never be able to do.
Yeah. And I think that even includes doing anything they need. I think sometimes we can look at the opportunities and we're like, oh, but that doesn't necessarily line up with what we were doing, or, I don't know how that's going to help us into spiritual conversations or whatnot. But again, anything the university will let us be a part of, that helps our communication with the administration, because it's communicating we're here to serve, which is what it is. We are here to serve our university. And that also allows great opportunity for communication with students. So if we're able to be a part of the orientation program, and maybe it's just that we are handing out cups of water, or we are buying the, burgers or whatever it may be for an event, if we're able to be there and students can see, oh, that's, that campus ministry, then man, that's another aspect of communication for us.
Sure, because then that gets into even a little bit of advertisement.
Exactly.
Because we're then advertising our campus ministry in a university setting, which is a win-win. Yeah. Because they're getting what they need and we're getting some free advertisement with students.
And we're building great rapport with the university so that the next time that they need something, it's like, oh, hey, that campus ministry over there, that Campus Connect or C Squared, they were really great the last time we asked them to do something. Right. Why don't we entrust them with this next thing that we're doing? Right. And the next thing we saw this actually in UKZN, at UKZN in Peter Maritzburg, is there was one year they let us help with the orientation program so much that the first year students thought we ran it. They legitimately, by the end of the week, thought that we were the ones in charge, that like it was our orientation program. We weren't going to tell them it wasn't. What an opportunity. But that took years of relationship building and serving the university to get to a place that they would give us such an open door to be a part of things.
Yeah, similarly, when we were on a campus in Louisiana, they got us to a point where we were actually picking up all of the international students that were coming in, and we were their first contact. Yeah. So when the international students came in, we were the university representatives that were at the airport. It was all our campus ministry. And that was a huge win for us in having relationships with international students, and especially students even who had come from countries where they had never heard the gospel before.
Yeah. Man, what a cool opportunity, just by serving the university.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many times that we don't realize that we're communicating. And we don't realize, if I pick these international students up at the airport, or if I'm serving alongside the orientation program, sometimes it doesn't even register that that's a communication aspect or a communication point for us.
Right.
But really it is. What would you say, Ange, is kind of the importance of always being aware of what we're communicating? Like how does that benefit, and then how does that hurt us as well?
Right. Well, I think always being aware of what we're communicating is definitely necessary, because I think otherwise you end up communicating things you're not trying to say.
Yeah.
And so you end up communicating that we don't want to be a part unless there's something in it for us, or you end up communicating that we don't care as much because it's not our thing, or we're only going to be involved if our name gets to be represented.
Yeah.
And those are never things that you would choose to
No.
say on purpose, but they're things that might get said on accident when you just aren't aware that you're communicating, or you're not thinking about the fact that you're communicating. So I think thoughtful communication is always a key.
Yeah.
You've always got to be thoughtful in your communication.
It even makes me think of, and I feel like we're getting into this more and more as we're in like a social media type of age. So we're having to be aware even more of
Sure.
what I put on Facebook, the way that I word it, what I say, my tone, my language, my spelling, my grammar, all of those kinds of things really does reflect,
Right.
For students that are hearing about us for the first time from our advertising, or from, just the way that we're communicating with the campus. So whether that is social media, it's Facebook, or it's, posters that we've actually put on campus. If we don't do well in those things, and I'm not saying that you need to send this off to a graphic designer and it needs to be elaborately printed, but if you don't at least like spell check it, or
Right.
make sure that your date and time is right, or make sure that you have a date and time on there. Because sometimes, we talk about the curse of knowledge, that I know everything, so when I read it, it's like, oh, well, that's fine. But it's because I know where to show up every week.
Right. One of the things that we did that was really helpful when we were printing pieces recently launching the church was, and this obviously would work in a university environment, was we gave the pieces to someone who knew nothing. And
Yeah.
we said, if I handed you this, would you be able to get to this event?
Yeah.
And then because they could see what was and wasn't on there. And we did that. I mean, seriously, handing it to waitresses and being like, hey, could you get to this event if we gave you this? And things like that were maybe a little bit funny, but
Yeah.
they helped us to see where our lacks were
Yeah.
in communication because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And
that,
so it was easier for them to check it for us.
it may seem a little silly to us, but what would be more silly is printing a bunch of advertising stuff, putting it all over campus, and then no one rocks up because they couldn't find it. Because we
Right.
forgot the venue, or we forgot the specific date, and things like that. And that happens way more than you would think. And so I think that's a great
Right.
idea of bounce it off to someone, not even another student leader or a church member, but if you even have a friend that,
A
is just,
roommate in res.
yeah, somewhere that they're not necessarily aware of all of it. Hey, can you get to this place? And then also check your tone and your wording and just the way that things are done. If your advertising says that you kind of think your event is mediocre, or your campus ministry is kind of mediocre, well then why in the world is someone else going to show up?
Right.
If you aren't that enthusiastic about it, or if you don't value it enough, and really this is where poor advertising comes in. Really what you're communicating is, I don't value this enough to go the extra mile. That may not be your intention, but that's what's going to come across. And for a first-time person, if that's what I see, and that's what I take in, well then I'm not coming.
I don't want to be there.
Because you don't actually care enough to make sure that everything is done well. You're not valuing it. So why should I take the little bit of spare time maybe I have and value your thing by showing up?
Right. Yeah, and so that would be even another way to check it, would be to ask the person who doesn't know anything about it and maybe doesn't come to your group at all.
Yeah.
Could you get to this event, and would you want to?
Yeah. That's
Does
a
this
great
make
question.
you want to come?
That's a great question to ask someone. What do you think of this? What is this, communicating? How does this make you feel about our campus ministry, about the event that's going on?
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about how we're promoting ourselves on campus. What about a promotional campaign? What's that about?
Yeah, I think that's actually one of my favorite ways of getting us out there. Really, simply put, it's just making noise. So you can attack a promotional campaign from a billion different angles, really. One thing we did at UKZN quite a few years ago was we did a week, or maybe it was about 2 weeks, of just making noise on campus. So we did banners, stand up, those stick in the ground. I think they call them flag banners that, you know, kind of flap and stuff.
Sure.
So we did that. I think we had posters on campus. We did t-shirts. And our thing was, so UKZN was Chi Alpha, was the name of the campus ministry. And so we did Chi Alpha ? On everything. And it was just getting students on campus kind of aware of who we were and asking the question. So even the t-shirts we did, on the back of the shirt, in between the shoulder blades, it had the Chi Alpha ? So even sitting in lectures, the person behind you is like, what is Chi Alpha? Boom, they ask, gives you an opportunity. So we did that type of stuff. And then we just hung out on campus a whole lot, like intentionally hung out. And so we would gather at different points on campus over the course of the week or two and just make noise. Again, we were just letting people know that we were there. And then we did host some random events here and there as well. We did a sports tournament on campus.
Sure.
We did free sweets and prayer because we were getting into exam time. So anything that we could think of that would just get us on campus and put our name out there a little bit more. And so again, that could be flyers, it could be posters, it could be banners. At one point we did what they call sandwich boards. And so I had a couple of guys that were willing to do this. I probably wouldn't have been willing, but they were, because we made these Lumo yellow sandwich boards and they would wear them and just wander around campus and chat with people.
And they just said Chi Alpha ?
I think that one may have been a specific event that we were advertising.
Okay.
But you could do Chi Alpha ? Or Campus Connect ? C squared ? Whatever it is that you're operating under. You could do something like that, or it could be advertising an event. And one of those guys actually told me recently that that was kind of a launching point for him of stepping out of his shell and really living a little bit more of an outreach missional life.
Wow.
And what a simple way. So not only did we impact the campus doing that, but it had a personal impact for students as well.
Sure, and so many things like that will.
Yeah.
I think a promotional campaign that has a very unified theme, where it's all the same leading up to a big event.
Yeah, even better.
Would be a great idea. So a week of Chi Alpha ? Or whatever it is, and then at the end of the week, a huge braai.
Yeah.
You know?
And I would say do that maybe mid-semester of the first semester of the year.
Yeah.
Because if you launch that too early in the beginning of the year, you're going to get lost in everything. Right. But if you give it a few weeks and then boom, hey, here we are. This is who we are. Right. This is what we're doing. Just sets you up to really let campus know, here we are. This is what we're about. Come be a part. We're inviting you to come and be a part.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then hopefully once they come and are a part, they will want to stick around.
That's definitely the goal, and communication comes into play there too.
Absolutely.
Because if you get people to an event and then the communication from the front is poor, people don't necessarily want to come back.
Yeah. It's the same like we were talking about, your printed pieces, the things that you're advertising with. If it's done poorly, I don't want to come to that.
Right.
So why don't you share a little bit then about how do we do that well? Or what are some things to steer clear of? That kind of stuff. Like how do we communicate from the front well enough that people want to come back?
I think one of the major things that really helps people want to come back when you're doing a communication from the front is that you're focusing on helping them in a felt need. So people need to feel like they're helped by what you've said. If I get up and I preach some really long well thought out sermon about something that doesn't have any bearing on anyone's life,
then I don't want to come back.
Then they're going to go, wow, all that did was make me feel like I was sitting in lectures again and my head hurts and I just want to go home and have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm talking about relationships with their roommates or relationships with the opposite sex or anything like that, well, people are that's interesting. People want to listen to that.
And it's relevant.
So, right. You want to be relevant to people's lives and for them to feel like, man, I'm coming out of here with something in my toolbox that I didn't come in with and I can live my life better because I heard this.
Yeah.
That's important.
I I think one thing that is unique to communication from the front in the South Africa setting is there's so many different languages that we operate under.
Sure.
And so if you're at UKZN, it would be easy to think, well, we could just do some things in Zulu. And that even could tie in with like our worship songs. We'll just slip some Zulu in there. But what we need to keep in mind, and if you're at Stellenbosch, maybe it's Afrikaans, but what we've got to keep in mind is not everyone is going to be comfortable with Zulu, not because it's an uncomfortable thing, but just they don't know it. And so if I come in for the first time and there's anything in a different language that I don't know, I automatically, there's a barrier and I feel a little bit alienated. And so as much as we want to embrace diversity, and we've talked about that a lot in this series, just embracing diversity, being intentional in diversity, we also want to make sure in our communications that we're not pushing anyone away. And so I would highly encourage you that everything that you're doing, really we're keeping it in English because it kind of levels the playing field for everyone.
Right.
And we're not going to alienate anyone, or we're not going to be communicating that we prefer a certain people group or that we prefer a certain cultural background. And so just being aware of that, and that again is a part of being aware of our communication and how we're coming across and what we're presenting.
Right. No, that's definitely true. And I mean, the same thing is true also when you're talking about announcements. So I'll get into a big group meeting and then there are announcements about life groups that happen or different things like that, which incidentally in South Africa would be a great place to bring in different languages.
Yeah.
To have life groups that run in different languages. Because that's maybe a person's heart language. It's the language that they're the most comfortable in. But so if I'm going to start announcing things, number one, I definitely want to make sure that my announcements are clear, that people can get the information. I want to make sure that my announcements are short. If I do 10 minutes of announcements, really, no one heard anything after the second minute.
Yeah.
So you want to keep your announcements down to 2 minutes, and you want to hit your main points, and you want to keep going and probably have some way for them to get information outside of that announcements, whether that's a table in the back that is manned by someone who knows the information or has the information written down. But not really relying on 10 minutes of announcements because nobody's listening.
No. And you want to make sure that you're communicating so that it's not a inside joke. So like you and I have known each other for quite a long time. So if we got up, it could very easily be the Miranda and Angie show. And it would be funny and it would be entertaining because there's just lots of history and we could tell all kinds of inside jokes and we could reference our crazy moms and our friends Angela and Missy, and it could be very entertaining for Angie and I.
Right, but that wouldn't entertain you.
No.
It would entertain us.
Yes.
And you would feel left out.
Yes, and it may entertain the front row that also knows us really well.
Right.
But if you're new for the first time, what's going to happen is you come in and you see, oh, well, I don't know them, and they're really established.
Of this.
Yeah, and this is their thing. This is the Miranda and Angie show, and I'm not Miranda nor Angie, and I don't know them, so I may not come back. So we just need to be cautious.
It's another one of those times when you're unintentionally communicating something that you're not trying to say. So you want to make sure that you're not speaking full of Christian jargon and inside jokes or things that only make sense within the context of people who've watched a certain training series and maybe they know what D by D means.
Right.
But nobody else knows what D by D means. And so if you announce D by D, they feel left out. You need to explain that and make sure people know what it is.
And that even ties in with just the jargon we use across the board. I think you can never explain things too much. You can lengthy-wise.
Sure.
But I think it's a great thing when you kick off maybe a worship service that you start with, hey guys, we're going to stand now and enter into a time of worship, and then someone will share a message. We may be used to that because that's what we do every single week, but just allowing people a great on-ramp, inviting them to be a part. You don't have to have this great background to come in. We want you to come in as you are, and we're inviting you into this thing that we're being a part of, this community that we're doing. So we just want to make sure that in all of our communication, that we're being efficient, but also creative. Again, running creativity through all of what we're doing in campus ministry, but just being very much aware of what we're doing, how we're communicating, handling our administration relations really well, advertising well on campus, and then from the front in everything that we're doing, including people, breaking it down so that they can be a part and know that they are invited to come and be a part of what we're doing. Because we want every student on campus to know that they are welcome and that Jesus loves them and that we are here to help them facilitate anything that they need.